神にも悪魔にもなれるって。でも俺は神様になれるわけないし、悪魔になんかなりたくない。俺は戦う。世界の平和を守るために。
Okay, so now that we put the Universal Century Gundam stuff behind us, let's go back to the 80 dimension.
We meet back up with Jill and the remains of Arsenal, who have rebuilt as much of the base as they could, which unfortunately robs us of the chance to get another battleship out of this as, yeah, Libertas, Jill's organization within Arsenal, has their own battleship hidden under the island.
Though to be fair, we already have an excess of battleships in this game, and we're going to get one more in a few stages, so a 10th one is a bit excessive. We could, however, have used it in X, though, considering how many battleships there are garbage. What, they didn't give us the Ikaruga at all, and the Choginga Daiguren only shows up in the end stages of the game. They needed something!
There's also a brief discussion of the other's embryos enthralled, bringing up bad memories for Jill, but also revealing that, yeah, Salia's whole stint, that was all on her own. Yeah, Jill used it, but she didn't encourage it, which was part of the problem. The only real way to get them to wake up is the common Japanese trope of deck him in the schnoz.
Ah yes, combat therapy. 60% chance of success as long as the character hit is not a complete scumbag. 20% chance of success even if they are.
To that end, Jill has Jasmine open up their entire resource warehouse to make sure everyone has what they need for battle, as they need to get the girls out of the Ragnamails before Embryo can use them for his world reset scheme. Hilda and Rosalie especially focused on their need to save Chris, and in Hilda's case probably something else, because Ange realizes that, at some point, Arsenal really came to be home for her.
Which is strange, as in this continuity, she's barely been here.
We find a mix of Embryos and Leonard's forces not far from Arsenal, and take them on en masse, led by Ursha, Chris, and Salia, which of course is our goal in this. Ange, when she joins the battle, needs to engage each of the three, with Hilda and Rosalie likewise engaging Chris to see if they can't talk sense to them, and Ursha of course is the easiest to talk to considering she agreed to work for Embryo in exchange for saving people. In the series canon, she returns to their side after she, in her fervor to do Embryo's bidding, actually shoots the replacement orphanage for the kids, and Embryo loses her loyalty when he stupidly chooses not to restore them. I mean, why should he? He already had Ursha swear her loyalty, and her loins, for saving them once. They're going to die anyways when they remake the world with Ursha as one of his wives, right? So, they don't actually matter to him. They'll just make more children replace them once it's done.
Basically, Ursha sold herself for an empty promise to keep them alive, and Embryo's actions in the aftermath exposed that he didn't do it for her or for them. He did it so he could get her, and then showed no interest in keeping nor maintaining their relationship.
Chris's problems, again, stem from how she feels like she's been mistreated by her closest friends, abandoned constantly as a third wheel stuck between the stronger personas of Hilda and Rosalie, either an attachment to Rosalie or a doormat for Hilda, exemplified by as while she prefers to keep her hair in paired pigtails, the elder girls thought she looked better with a single braid, as when they were younger they could only afford a single braid for her, and peer pressure kept her from really trying to defy them or get them to do things she liked. The problem here was less they didn't care about her or only saw her as an accessory, and more that Chris never really spoke up and tried to impress upon them the things that were important to her upon her friends. Hilda and Rosalie are guilty of something here that damaged their relationship enough for Chris to go to Embryo, but the reality is it's just them being oblivious to Chris's own needs in her own selfishness, in Hilda's case, and vanity in Rosalie's.
But the truth is, they did care. They're just really awful at showing it, and proving it is part of how they resolve this.
Salia's issues we've gone over the longest, but we see more from Jill's side why she's been so shut out. Jill is so obsessed with killing Embryo and getting revenge now that she doesn't care about the casualties that may result as long as stupid hair is denied his goals. Thus why Ange has actually been held back by her. She doesn't want Ange getting near the Ragnamail riders in the slightest chance Ange and the Vilkas are abducted, but of course puts it in the terms of cold numbers and using people as tools to achieve an end result. She tries to insist she's just like Ange, raging against an unjust world and doing anything she can to destroy it and its false god responsible for its broken state.
And in another time and place, it's possible Jill would be right. But the difference between them is Anj didn't shut herself off from other people because they didn't let her be. From Ursula and Vivian, to Momoka, to Tusk, and even Hilda in their canon, and the rest of the ship's alliance in the game, Anj has had people in her camp she trusts and treats like close family. Jill, by comparison, has forgotten what that's like, or as it is implied by Embryo seducing her in her own past, likely never had after being outed as a Norma that allowed her to be manipulated so that led to her allies' deaths in the prior rebellion.
And now people she cares about are all out there fighting among themselves, all because of the sinister, selfish manipulations of a guy that doesn't give a damn about any of them beyond as a notch on a post or a warmer of a bed. And Anj is not going to let this selfish bitch stand in her way, if she herself is not going to do anything to fix her hand in causing this.
She's trying to forget you, so now she's obsessed with him. I'm not gonna let you pretend that isn't your fault.
Which is where Gates comes in, reassigned from the front lines to abduct a woman.
Because who better to send to secure precious goods than the serial rapist?
And he's technically not alone. See, remember how I said that all of Embryo's founding nation's humans are technically synthesized homunculi, with only the Norma being actually human? Yeah, Embryo can completely 100% hijack those homunculi and inject his own consciousness into them to use as a remote terminal. These people being nothing but dolls to him to slip in and out of as just toys. And he does that now with Momoka to try and screw with Anj while he has Momoka attack and injure Tusk. It turns into a battle of wills as Anj tries to get Momoka to come back to herself and become truly human. Throw off Stupid Hair's complete mental domination, and to once more emasculate Stupid Hair, she actually succeeds.
She's my princess. That's right. Mr. Tusk, look after her for me.
Fool.
Light of mana!
But how...
She lives! Yeah, even in canon. I have no explanation for it, as the show doesn't explain it itself. Did her getting hit by a truck coon pull another universe version of her in? Hell, you want to one-up on that?
Huh? You can't do this! No, stop! Tusk!
Miscreant. No girl would fall for a creep like you! I'm so glad you're safe.
Is that you?
Yeah.
And I think blowing up oneself with a suicide vest is a few higher steps up from a puncture wound.
Next time I try that, I should remember not to put myself in the middle of it, though. I always thought I could survive even a nuclear explosion. I may need to reconsider that.
The best explanation, considering the multiverse stuff going on with the series, is pulled from a parallel dimension or their own the moment before death, so their injuries could be avoided or treated, thanks to the will of the Vilcus. There actually is precedent for that, thus what I'm going with, but there's no actual in-series explanation. And even Momoka recovering enough to possibly put a barrier around them so they survived their respective assaults is questionable at best.
Regardless, because Anj is pissed off with their closest, lifelong friend being grievously injured, Anj has no patience for dealing with indoctrinated women right now. Thus, the second we're out on the battlefield, she steamrolls straight through Salia, Chris, and Ursha, berating all three for letting themselves be so easily and blindly used by such a womanizer. And if they don't want to listen, then there's no point in talking. Ursha, as I've said, is the one we can reason with in all this because she did this for others and not herself. But it's Shin that once more is the one that refutes her actions due to his own experience of doing horrible things and committing atrocities in the name of lost loved ones. That even if Stupid Hair did bring them back, he was the one that got them killed in the first place in order to use her. And besides that, can Ursha really face them with a real smile on her face, knowing that she betrayed everyone that mattered to her, subjugate herself beneath a narcissist that killed them originally, just for them? Unfortunately, as the battle ends, Stupid Hair's agents do succeed in ambushing Anj and the Vilcus, capturing them and also appearing to blow up Tusk's I still cannot pronounce that word. But Ursha shows the strongest conflict over what she's doing, and ultimately surrenders. Anj is taken to the Mitsurugi Empire, meeting Marina and Kigali inside, who likewise have been imprisoned as Stupid Hair's consorts, though to date, Stupid Hair has yet to force himself on either of them, or mess with them to make them amicable to his advances, as he's been too focused on trying to get into Anj's pants.
So now we get to the part of Cross Anj that shows how squicky the series can be, but again for all the right reasons. See, as established, Stupid Hair is obsessed with Anj by this point for defiance, as he's a guy that likes a challenge. But as you could guess from how he mistreats Chris, Sally, and Ursha as being just tools and possessions he needs to perform regular maintenance on, he is not actually interested in a supportive relationship, but those who worship him.
And as such, he has no care for actually bridging a connection and for the actual wants and desires of his toys. He's really only after trophy wives that do as they're told. Thus, he takes the easy way out.
This stems from an aversion to thinking for oneself, because when it comes to humans, that causes extreme discomfort.
What is this? What did you do?
Those violent impulses come from your anxiety. But I can release you from all of that. Surrender to me. Abandon it all, including your clothes.
Thing is, that doesn't work on anyone who's gone through self-actualization.
But how
I won't become one of your dolls. I'm gonna kill you. Till you're dead for good.
Yeah, the order of events here are shuffled a bit, but this is the exact same type of rebellion Anj instilled in Momika, just applied to herself to resist Stupid Hair's mental attacks. The same ones that left Jill a wreck and have indoctrinated their friends now. This is also why I said that Stupid Hair raped Jill earlier, even though that's not being implicitly stated. If you manipulate someone's mind into having sex with you, then they are not giving voluntary consent. It is the same as if you had sex with someone possessed by a spirit. Their own autonomous free will has been violated into performing that act, and thus compromised their ability to independently agree. They have been manipulated into it. And Stupid Hair does this because he literally cannot get anyone to do it with him otherwise.
This also exposes the extent of how deeply Stupid Hair can manipulate things around him. Not just thoughts and actions, but also feelings. Him showcasing that he can make it so every nerve ending triggers a pain response, or turn pain into deepest carnal pleasure. Something that a normal person would beg for release from in the former, or beg not to stop in the latter, as we are not coded to resist sources of pleasure or euphoria.
And yet, Anj never gives in. Not once at any point. It is impossible for Stupid Hair to break her. And he hates that. For she has achieved the forbidden resistance. Yes, I do need to keep title dropping the show's theme song. It is just that damn good.
Ironically, Stupid Hair's obsession with Anj has worked to undo Salia's own brainwashing, as her terms were to have him all to herself, someone that needed her, and only her. The others were agreements, but what she wanted was devotion and validation, so for Stupid Hair to put all this extra time and effort into claiming Anj, yeah, dude fucked up in his harem management scheme at step 1. I know a few harem protagonists who could help him with that, if they didn't think he was a complete scumbag. Thus, Salia, and to a lesser extent Kaname, as there are still aspects of her that haven't been completely subsumed by Sophia to remind you that that plot still exists, gets her the hell out of there, as even beyond that, there's a part of Salia that knows that Anj was legitimately her friend, and never tried to steal the place in the world she thought was hers, while also planting the seeds in Salia's head that Embryo only wanted her to get Anj. The rest of the team makes it to the Mitsurugi Empire one last time, Rosalie diving straight to confronting Chris, while she tells Hilda to go after and help Anj, as As I've alluded to before, Hilda has fallen for her. But yeah, final confrontation with Chris over Embryo actually using her, it having to be pointed out to her that if Stupid Hair was really her friend, then why would he be pushing her into constant danger without any active care for her safety? The exact thing she accused Rosalie and Hilda of, despite them actually showing concern for her through all this. Othron being the Gundam Seed cast member to butt in on this, considering he is the most experienced of that cast when it comes to fighting friends across the opposing sides of battle, and him being the one to not listen to Kira before their mutual screw-ups led into a spiral of tragedy. And like a lot of things, it requires actually telling someone when something's affecting you to get even the people closest to you to understand.
I gotcha! Without you, my life is totally hopeless. I'm in love with you, Chris. I need you. Please be my friend again. Please. I'm so sorry.
Whatever. I won't forgive you till you buy me a new hairpiece.
I'll buy you 1,000 of them.
I feel silly. This is supposed to be the end of the world. So what in the heck are we doing?
We're making up, right?
Hilda, that should have been my line.
This is where Salia comes in. Disgusted by this betrayal and about to execute the traitors, since they can't move with Hilda's paramel wrecked. So fortunate then that Jill's finally gotten herself in proper gear for this confrontation, and suited up in the Ragnamail Ursha gave up, the Razia. She covers them long enough for Hilda to take possession of piloting the Theodora while evacuating Chris, as Jill reminds, or rather, reveals, that Stupid Hair, who Salia is so devoted to now, has a very long history of infidelity. But unfortunately, Salia has trapped herself in the same cycle she had with Jill, thinking that just achieving the next task will make her love interest, recognize her as special and worthy of attention.
But the thing is, Salia, they never do. Not the way you want them to be, because they only actually care for themselves.
Now, in canon, this encounter ends with Jill ultimately dying to wake her up from this delusion, but as this is a video game where the entire point of it is you can avoid pointless deaths if you trigger the right conditions, if you fought the indoctrinated girls in every way I've indicated at this point, Salia never gets the chance, and Jill instead defeats her, rendering her helpless and force her to acknowledge that her lashing out at everyone because she doesn't get what she wants, led around like an attack dog at the slightest urging for a reward for someone else. Yeah, as the Gundam Seed protagonists point out, that's how Shin used to be before Othron stopped him. It's the same caustic mindset that almost destroyed him.
Once more, points at the cap of validating my perspective in the way Gundam Seed Destiny as a story only works if Shin is its fall from grace villain protagonist.
As what Salia needed, hell, what all the women of Arsenal needed, is what I said before, the ability to gain a sense of self-validation and actualization as functional, independent individuals. Salia tried so hard to fit the mold she wanted others to see her as, that she's lost sight of herself, and she's only beginning to realize how damaging that was, as it allowed her to be manipulated by empty words said by a man incapable of understanding the meaning behind them. Inside the palace, Sosuke breaks in to rescue Anj and the others, only to run straight into Leonard and the Sophiad Kaname. He tries to wake her up, and is partially successful, but Leonard drags her back into the haze by sticking some of his guards on her, only for Tusk to dive in and back him up, having survived his purported death. They evacuate, Kaname coming with them, for now, and Anj once more calling Vilkas back to her, and into battle, just in time for Stupid Hair to attack everyone on the field, including Salia, which serves as her final wake-up call. Salia defending Jill and the Razia from Stupid Hair's shots, as it's built to be tougher than the other Ragnamails. Well, that and both the Theodora and Cleopatra Ragnamails have unlocked their own mode changes similar to Vilkas. Something Stupid Hair could not get to work with them, or any male writer that has ever worked for him.
It's my life. No one gets to control me anymore!
and thus it's time to shut him down and out of their lives, with a collection of reason you suck speeches because we are still not at the point where we can kill this bastard. We can, however, destroy his physical form, but he's able to retreat and try to attempt his World Fusion Reset button without his support units. But fortunately, with 2 mechs opposing him that are capable of casting Discord Feather, it doesn't quite work out for him. The attack's finally freeing the dragon Aura from her prison in the Misurgi Tower, causing mana in the Founding Nations to disappear, and the AD Dimension faction of the Alliance to once more be warped back to the UC Dimension, where while they wait for the word from the other groups, the Cross-Age girls can all reconcile, with there no longer being a need for them to fight the dragons.
Are you sure? I'm positive people would have liked seeing an all-girl I Fight Dragons cover band.
This takes us to the UC Dimension Ground Troops sect, headed by all the super robots, as they go to face off with Dr. Hell's forces as they prepare for their full assault on the Federation. And actually more ties into the plot of Shin Mazinger Z Edition The Impact.
Well, okay, technically there is a different plot going on with the Mazinger stuff, but this is the one that most of these versions of the cast are from, and as such, they're after something hidden under the Mazinger's home base, the Photonic Power Research Institute.
As it's kind of insane, I'll just explain it here. Dr. Hell is trying to get at the corpse of Zeus. Yes, the god Zeus, which is crystallized into an unusual metal that Koji's grandfather used to construct the version of Mazinger Z seen in this game. This is why in the attack animations the fist turns gold and you see an allusion to Zeus. Those were intentionally tied to that. And Dr. Hell would like to not wreck the lab built upon that corpse either. He is a scientist after all and respects technological advancements. But the Defenders aren't willing to budge on this and his clear evil goals.
Yeah, about that.
Dr. Hell has started to act suspicious throughout all this, trying to keep Ashura out of combat as much as possible, despite Ashura trying to claim and defeat the Mazinger for him, to the point that when Ashura is in danger of death, Hell himself joins the fray in his ultimate creation, Hell King Gordon?
Damn, I didn't know Dr. Hell ran a kitchen in his off time.
But this is also where Tetsuya comes in once again, as they're nearing the red line for the crisis he's on about, and can't let Mazinger win this one. Aiming to destroy his nephew's Mazinger Z once and for all, and Koji's not going to let him, as no matter if it's gods or devils, space-time or dimensions, it is the ultimate super robot.
Yeah, about that.
And, surprise, surprise, Tetsuya going against us for this big mission doesn't work here either, as Sayaka's dad informed Koji of Mazinger's secret ability, Mazin Power, the ability to create power from nothing.
Yeah, about that.
And with them converting the Research Institute into its battle configuration, they transfer photon energy into Mazinger, allowing it to unlock its final technique that can allow it to forever deck Dr. Hell in the schnoz. So if you thought he was winning this, I just have one question to ask him.
Will I hit you with my right fist or decide to deck you with my left?
Your right one?
No.
Your left?
No.
Not gonna use both, are you?
Yes.
You gonna do the Aurora thing?
Yes. Oh my god.
Rocket punch! Shaku! Land! Pop!
So, I have a question about that attack, and it's 1-9 shares. Where do those spare rocket punches come from? In addition to the impact, they come from scrapped Mazinger prototypes, but here, nowhere.
However, with Dr. Hell's defeat, this is where things go off the rails. See, Ashura, as I described before, was the result of Dr. Hell cutting apart and sewing together a pair of lovers named Tristan and Isolde. But the reason he did that is because they are actually the key to awakening an ancient evil. Were either of them to die, it would wake up, and Hell's attempts to gather power was an attempt to thwart that evil while also keeping their key subordinate to himself so it wouldn't trigger. With Hell dying because of his defeat by Koji, well, we kind of screwed up here, as now Ashura can do what Hell was preventing them from doing, and awaken the Mycenaean gods.
The Mycenaean Empire are primarily the great Maziger's antagonists from his series, differing variations of the Mazinger series tending to change up their modus operandi. But in Edition Z The Impact, they're basically pre-Greek mythos gods equivalent to Titans, which used Earth as a waypoint between their larger battles across the cosmos. Zeus, a former member of them, liked it here and freed Earth from their tyranny, at least in that canon. In the Super Robot Wars V continuity, though, humanity had a thriving world and culture where the Mycenae showed up, and thus fell into conflict with someone that was trying to destroy and remake the world themselves, Embryo. Their fight, which relied heavily on Getter rays absorbed into Terganium to sustain it, wrecked the Universal Century Earth, and distortions in space-time, creating 3 branching realities. Well, technically they created 2, and then connected a 3rd one to it. The origin point, that is the Universal Century Earth, where the original Timeline Gundams, Mazinger, and Getter all coexist, while the Dragons were born to clean up the mess they left. The NCC dimension, which, without the hindering influence of radiation poisoning, the world was able to rebuild itself faster, thus why it's 100 years ahead in its tracking of time. And the AD dimension, where Stupid Hair and other survivors of the Cataclysmic War set up shop and subjugated the normal human population in various ways via his mana-manipulating homunculi. And now you know what I was talking about when I said the history primers we got when we first jumped here spoiled the later story.
So yeah, Ashura has opened the gates to Hell, and it's kind of funny, as Mazinger Edition Z The Impact actually ends on this act. There's no episode past it, because the actual first episode of the series is an in media res version of these events and the actual final battle Mazinger has with it. It just reads very poorly in that respect, with the only evidence of who wins the conflict being given as the second episode starts, and then the rest of the series acts as a gigantic flashback arc to how they got there. A lot of people don't understand that about the series, thus are confused when they watch it. But yeah, meet Hades, and the other Mycenaean gods that formerly inhabited Mount Olympus. Or as Embryo cuts in to comment, the demons of the Greek pantheon that were banished from it by Zeus for their cruelty. And without Zeus around to give them a pep talk and power-up, they're not exactly in the shape to call upon divine will to even be able to damage any of these entities beyond mortal life.
Yeah, about that.
This battle is a war of attrition. Just try to team people up and take down as many of the Mycenaean agents as you can, and hold out until the 5th turn of battle. It's easier to do this on New Game Plus, of course, but every little bit helps, as the game intentionally makes this a very hard battle. Though it is amusing the Evangelions are here for this, considering they're normally here to kill divine messengers, not devils. Oh, and they're not the only ones here. Xev sends Purple here to interfere and makes things even harder on behalf of his own boss, prompting Joe to come in as an ally, as he's figured out that Xev was involved with his own father's death to make him a dragon antagonist, and he's shucking those restraints to his conduct, but it's a minor distraction to the main event, and Mazinger facing down an ancient god.
I'ma deck you in the schnoz.
This is unfortunately the worst thing they could have possibly done.
As this Mazinger, as we've been seeing, once Mazian power is enabled within it, the greater the crisis the mech is put into, the more it draws out hidden, unexpected power within it to counter such and then dominate it. This isn't exactly plot superpowers, but a system meant to adapt and enhance the machine's abilities in response to conflict and stimuli. It, in essence, being a completely mechanical means of evolution similar, but not connected to, the Getter Ray's rapid advancement and evolution of their own powers. But there's a limit before even that leads to the mech's own rampancy, and awakens a beast that is best left slumbering in the empty void. Awaken, the existence that subjugates gods and slaughters devils.
So, you know how I said that the Getter Emperor was the second most powerful entity in all of fiction, with how it's a multiversal existence that starts evolution just so it consumed the results of it to make itself stronger, and consume more and more of the multiverse in doing so? yeah, this is what outclasses it. Some could make an argument that the Emperor's growing power makes its abilities limitless, but here's the thing. You can't divide by 0.
Mazinger Zero is the origin point to all Mazingers. Like the Getter Emperor, its existence is rooted in all Mazing tech thanks to a causal time loop. Koji's grandfather develops the Mazinger technology, the battles with Dr. Hell happen, Koji learns from his grandfather's work, advances it, and then sends back in time an android that contains all developments of the Mazing technology to the originator of the technology, Koji's grandfather, who then learns from it and builds upon it to make a stronger Mazinger. But due to the way how this causality loop is started, it is self-sustaining as it overwrites the originating branch that all Mazinger timelines in the multiverse inevitably originate from. And that self-sustaining time loop results in the creation and installation of a black box component in all Mazinger mechs throughout the multiverse. An emergency system that releases all possible limiters of the Mazinger's power and turns it into the truly invincible Mazinger Zero. The Mazinger Zero's power is simultaneously multifaceted and yet very simple. It is metafictionally aware. Any power that any Mazinger has throughout fiction, any power that a Mazinger has in the multiverse, any power that any mech derived from a Mazinger bears, Zero has it too. And its onboard power amplifiers make sure that it isn't acting as the imitation in copying these powers. And that is the key to why it is so terrifying in existence to create, showcase, or even think of. Because every piloted mecha, literally everyone in fiction, derives itself in some way, shape, or form from Mazinger Z. Gundams, Gunmen, Nightmares, Ragnamel, Getters, General Super Robots, Evangelions, Super Sentai Combining Mecha, Brave Series Robos, Jaegers, Zoids, Ace Tavalis, Arm Slaves. No matter if they come from north, south, east, or west in origin, Mazinger is their origin point. And they all go back to Zero. And thus, because it is metafictionally aware, it can do everything. Everything any of them can do all at once. It is the literal god of all super robots, and it is not a benevolent deity. Because of all the powers it bears, its most terrifying is that with nothing more than it can outdo Thanos with the Infinity Gems and reset all existence to 0, leaving nothing but an eternally calm, desolate void. Once again, Go Nagai has no concept of overkill. And that's not even the end of what it can do. That's just what it's most known for being able to do. It's like, Zero can bitch slap Super Tengen Toppa Gurren Lagann and beat it without effort. It can! And this is ironically why Tetsuya's entire quest was not only futile, but pouring gas on the fire. Because every Mazinger has the possibility to become Zero. The only way to stop it awakening in your timeline is to get every Mazing pilot to stand down before dismantling their mechs in their entirety. If you try to force the issue and attack them with greater and greater force, then what the pilot will do instead is draw more power that originates from Zero into their respective Mazing and risk awakening it in full. This is what has been going on with the Mazinger Z in this game all this time, when it would be getting new weapons like the Iron Cutter and drill missiles mid-battle. The black box of the unit that houses the protocols that tap into Zero's multiversal existence were triggered, and the Mazinger gained abilities it either would gain in the future, or another Mazinger in the multiverse already had. It wasn't secret installed emergency systems, but systems that installed themselves when the need for them arose. And thus in his attempt to stop it, and his refusal to tell everyone what was happening, Tetsuya has in fact caused the resurrection of Zero.
I mean, at least I can blame someone for that stupid movie Beyond Sunrise not knowing what their audience wanted after they got so much negative feedback on the compilation films.
But that leads into the other problem of Awakening Zero, in that they woke it up. Zero is sentient and self-aware, and as it was made as a straight-up engine of destruction and domination, well, congratulations! You've brought on the apocalypse, only now held back because Koji's in there piloting it, and trying to avoid being assimilated into it. Koji manages to get it to flee, but it's only a matter of time before Zero goes out and kills everything. At this point, the three routes reconverge, and everyone catches up while moored at Tokyo 3. The Eva pilots called back to test out the next Evangelion in the series, Unit 3. Then if you're familiar with Eva, no matter the series, manga, or movies, is infested with the parasitic angel, Bardiel.
Because this is taken from the Rebuild movies, though, we don't see Shinji's classmate Toji Suzuhara pilot it, and it has been a scenario in past Super Robot Wars games to be able to save him and Unit 3 from Bardiel to use as one of the save the character recruitable units. Rebuild canon, not so much.
Instead, Asuka is brought in as its test pilot, which, considering the hypercondensation of the Rebuild stuff, doesn't make much sense, as they still need to recruit more pilots, and it's not like Mari Makinami is doing much here herself. Hell, it makes a worse showcase for Asuka in that version of events, as not only did her development arc get sidelined, now she's in the position they normally use to kill off a character, just to shove Mari in to do something on top of her already lacking existence as a character.
Seriously, Anima does more with Mari than the Rebuild movies that created her character, and in the light novel, she's a frickin' cat girl.
But yeah, Bardiel triggers itself the second Unit 3 is activated, hijacking it in Asuka, and sending it barreling into Nerve's underground geofront, where we get one of the more baffling incidents from Eva. Geno Ikari pulling rank and insisting the unit be destroyed, without making any attempt to rescue the pilots.
Like, Gendo is a scumbag, but considering both the protests of the Eva team and the difficulty of even activating pilots for them, you would think he would agree for them to make an attempt. But if it looks like they can't be saved, and insist on destroying the unit after that. As yeah, the pilot can be saved if they just break the rest of the unit or get the entry plug to eject. There's literally no harm in doing it, as it motivates the team to fight harder instead of breaking their morale.
Hell, even in canon where Geno activates the experimental dummy plug autopilot system which completely wrecks Bardiel, he just needed to turn it off a bit sooner than he did so it didn't crush said entry plug. Shinji would have still been a wreck from that betrayal, but then he wouldn't have lost resources and trust that only hinders their ultimate goal, and then endangered all their lives when the next angel showed up. Any argument he could have made for him being a broken man going through the motions to get his wife back pretty much dies with that scene, as it shows that he actually only cares about himself and pursuing his own goals to their fullest with reckless abandon, and it's why he never achieves what he wants, because he didn't put the effort needed into properly maintaining the relationships needed to get there, and instead, like Stupid Hair, just seeing everyone as tools.
Rebuild of Evangelion, of course, doubles down on all of that, but thankfully Super Robot Wars V does not.
Instead, this is where Mari comes in, hijacking Eva Unit 2 herself, and says she's going to help rescue Asuka, which in turn motivates Shinji on the task at hand so Gendo doesn't have the chance to trigger the dummy plug. Or rather, with Shinji not being spineless in this incarnation, the Yui Ikari that is trapped in the Eva responds to her son's will and rejects Gendo's attempts to use it on her. And it's a good thing they didn't, as due to all the reality warping going on, Bardiel is not the only angel to awaken. Zerul as well has come out to play.
Also known as the strongest angel featured in the main Evangelion series, outside of Anima at least. AT Field as strong as Ramiel's, the mobility of Satchel and Samshell, and actually knows how to protect its core.
Fortunately, the rebuild timeline has some features the core one doesn't with its Evas. Mari triggering Unit 2's secret Beast Mode power limiter release that allows it to do some more damage to it, but it's not enough either, nor is Rei running at it with explosives, which just leads to her being assimilated.
Which again, for the rebuild films, does not make sense beyond forcing Shinji into a place as a character he already would have been able to enter in canon without such happening.
And it goes from bad to worse, as Guardian also chooses now to come in and wreck everyone's crap, and draw the assembled forces away from intervening and backing up Shinji when he so desperately needs it.
Or at least, if it were canon, but this is once again the brilliance of the Super Robot Wars games, in that the interactions they have are not superfluous, but do permit character development to affect them.
Thus, the other protagonists just need to remind Shinji what he's truly fighting for, to remind him that he's no one else but him, and his friends are relying on him to save them. And thus he awakens the true power of Unit 1. But Shinji doing this is going to destroy him too. Thus, Realma once more drags him back from going too far, pulling Asuka out of the remains of Bardiel, and allowing Shinji to calm down while the Eva is still in its awakened state. And the power of its awakening is needed, as Mazinger Zero has sensed all of this activity and come to tear away the defenders of the world, Koji begging them to run. However, since Shinji was saved from the Berserk Eva earlier in the game, with him in control of the Supercharged Unit 1, it's time for him to return the favor as a savior giant of light. Shinji's actions allow Tetsuya enough time for his own plan that he hopes will act in repentance for jump-starting this catastrophe, sending the Great Mazinger to overload and ramming it straight into Zero. Him surprisingly surviving, but in doing so, it allows him to pilot a new machine specifically made to counter the threat of Zero. The Great Mazin Emperor, Mazin Emperor G.
Mazin Emperor G was specifically created for this video game. Yeah, I'm not kidding on that. Gonagai was fully on board with it too, and it has since been edited into the Mazinger canon as a Mazinger made to assist in the pacification of Zero in the event it went rampant, and defied as an upgraded form of the Great Mazin Kaiser from the Mazinger Zero manga.
しっかりしろコージマジンガーを悪魔にするなこいつで決めてやる雷鳴を切り裂けエンペラーソード
And thus, it is time to pacify Zero.
Yes, you all just saw that yourselves. Shinji freaking Ikari, the whipping boy among all Mecha series protagonists, just punched out the super robot equivalent to Cthulhu to save the world. I freaking love this game.
With this, Shinji and Tetsuya save Koji. Koji's own wish to not harm his friends and family, weakening the super robot god enough that them bashing away at it allows Koji's will, alongside a little injection of Getter energy courtesy of the Shin Getter, to bring it back under control. After all, the one weakness of a piloted robot, even a sentient one, is its pilot. And if the machine and pilot are at odds with each other, then even the most powerful existence can be defeated by a lesser being. And the Getter team's intervention allows Koji to truly commune with Zero's consciousness, revealed to still be only half-formed in his Mazinger from its existence beyond space-time. In their talk, it exposes Koji's own doubt over his grandfather's actions and insecurities in himself, his reliance on the Mazinger over his own skills being because he doesn't entirely feel worthy of it, just being a cog that gets it to move, which Zero says that's all he'll be, and that's almost what he became, because he didn't try to make the Mazinger his own. Mazinger's power is to create power from nothing, but it is how the pilot controls that will that makes the unit a savior or destroyer, and allowing himself to be enslaved to a rampaging robot, that is what let this all go awry with all the other factors. And so, Zero gives him the choice. Be subsumed by Zero and be a slave to its power, or resist it and work alongside it. God or devil, it depends on the will of the pilot. And that is how you tame the power of a god.
神を超え悪魔をも滅ぼすそれがマシンガーゼロだマシンガ ーの真の力を思い知れ。食らえファイナルブレストノバー。
こんなの美しくない。絶対に何かが間違ってるわよ。
おじいちゃん、これが俺の選んだ道だ。
With Zero no longer warping reality and Guardian taken out of the battle, Shinji can finally face off with Zerul, making contact with it and destroying it, and managing to drag Rei out of it all on his own. And thus we subvert the ending of Rebuild of Eva 2.0 that leads to very, very bad things in the worst Evangelion timeline.
No, we have our villain assortment for that.
Yeah, stupid hair Leonard and X have come in now, and reveal they've actually been able to trigger the beginning of their world fusion plots and scattering everyone again.
And they would have gotten away with it too if it weren't for a certain meddling dragon!
Yeah, Shinji wakes up in the medical ward alongside the recovering Rei and Asuka, with Misato dragging him out, and showing that Aura has prevented the reality collapse from working, and contained the beginnings of the event within Nerve's geofront so it won't affect anything else, at least for the time being. All the crystallized Draganium that the dragons have stockpiled is being fed to her right now to prevent the dimensional collapse, but it is not going to last forever.
On the bright side, it will hold for longer than her doing the same in Cross-Ange, where she had to resist a full world overwrite after it got started, as opposed to holding it back from beginning.
Unfortunately, nothing and no one here can permanently stop this process now that it has begun. The dimensional collapse is inevitable, and the tidal forces of the world fusion will take with it everything in its proximity, so evacuations to colonies, even Mars, will not allow everyone to escape it. They need something that can undo the damage that is being done and reverse it in its entirety.
They need the Cosmo Reverse System from Space Battleship Yamato. Yeah, you all forgot about that, didn't you? Well, it is now that we are finally getting back on course to Iskandar.
And as such, everyone that's coming along for the trip now is busy getting ready with supplies and last-minute upgrades, including the Nerve Staff. This properly introducing Mari Makanami and her Eva Unit 8 Alpha to the crew, as they find that the dimension warping has caused Satchel, Shamshel, Ramil, and that one from Rebuild 2.0 that I don't know the name of, to have an encore appearance that the Eva ladies take on themselves, since Unit 1's awakening has made it a danger to everyone. Instead, this is where the few elements of 3.0 are getting injected, with the introduction of Tabris, aka Kaworu Nagisa, the angel that in the end sides with humanity. And with him is the Evangelion that damned the world in 3.0, Unit 13, which has Kaworu act as Shinji's co-pilot in it, and allows them to then support the unit with remote weapons empowered by the Eva's abilities that allows it to outclass even the other Evas in close combat powers, but unfortunately leaves it mostly without armaments otherwise, with exception to its ultimate weapon, twin recreations of the mythical Lance of Longinus. In the aftermath of this awakening, and Gendo ruminating on why Unit 1 outright rejected the dummy plugs, he tries to make the smallest of overtures he can to Shinji to see if they might begin to repair the relationship, to see if Gendo can stop being a coward, but nothing comes of it, because there are other things to focus on.
Namely, some of our last recruits, and a frustrating pair because they originate from Day 1 DLC. Day 1 DLC that I, and everyone getting this game now, still can't access as Day 1 DLC. I hate it when Bandai and other companies do that, and this is a blanket issue. Companies that offer pre-order bonus DLC, if you're going to make it anyways, then make it a free immediate access add-on that you will release as purchasable content down the line. That way, best of both worlds. You reward the die-hard fans that do a pre-order, while also not alienating newcomers to the content later.
The DLC I'm referring to unlocks 2 units and pilots. Velt, who pilots the Huckbane, and Lottie, who pilots the Gungrust. Both of them being Super Robot Wars original characters and units who have made infrequent appearances for the longest time in their content.
As I said early on, every new Super Robot Wars game gets a viewpoint character unit like the Vangray, and they regularly reappear all across the franchise. The Huckbane is actually one of the most popular of these units. Its only competitors to my knowledge for this being the Altesian, the Getspence, and the Cybuster.
While you can access this stage that gives you them here, though, without the need of Day 1 DLC, this is the last time you actually can. If you got the Day 1 DLC, you actually get them after the Yamato launches in the first stage and before you recruit Tobia in the second, which changes a lot of the character dynamics with these new characters injected into things, but most people can't see that. And that's frustrating. But on top of them, if you've gone through the recruitment point process, we also get Jared, Yazan, and Ling to join us here, as unrest within the Federation government has gotten the charges against Londo Bell dropped. Thus, G-Hound no longer has a reason to accost them. Oh, they're still complete jerks, but as the exchange between Camille and Jared here shows, they're sick of being angry and digging up endlessly old grudges. They're going to hold them accountable for their actions, as they should be, but revenge? It's a worthless cause that only incites the cycle they've all been trying to break. Oh, and Kaname, remember, she was rescued earlier, is all on board for this too. Sophia's still in her head, but is shutting up for the moment as there's so much going on that the Whispered had nothing to do with influencing. So Kaname herself is taking charge to show that everything she believes was their fault was not. And so she can shove that reality down Leonard's throat in spite for what he tried to do to her. Well, with the Arsenal girls, well, Hilda confesses her growing feelings to Anj, who actually accepts them.
I've always seen you as my Prince Charming. Here we are at the end of the world, and I'm just...
We'll make it through this. I need you with me in the new world. Okay?
Anj...
Now, I would say my unintended, because damn it, everything is gay about this meme, but no, that's not applicable to this situation. Because damn it, everything is bi about this, as Tess doesn't actually get pushed to the side for them to hook up.
No, Anj is getting it both ways in her own canonical little harem. In the lead up to her final battle with Stupid Hair, her giving herself fully to Tusk as after everything they've gone through, she did fall in love with him as well, and didn't want to miss the chance to show it again.
I would say she's the first Sunrise protagonist to actually get laid as part of the main plot of their story, instead of happening in between entries or after a time skip, but I've not seen every Sunrise series, and she's technically preempted on that by Kira from back with the whole mess with Flay and her manipulation of him in the original Seed.
However, not everything is going straight with this. We've got some traitors on the Yamato. The officer named Ito, actually the head of a secret plot from the NCC Dimensions, fed government of a backup plan to Yamato's main mission, the Izumo Plan, which is to just abandon Earth in its entirety and finding a habitable world to repopulate with.
The Izumo Plan is due to failure from the start, as there's nothing that stops the Gamillions from attacking the settlers as they are rebuilding. To not even get into the fact that you need a few thousand people to have enough genetic diversity to not worry about inbreeding in the populace so they wouldn't just all die out.
Embryo, however, has his own interest in this, as does another man we've not talked about, them stealing this information and escaping on a familiar machine, one that outclasses the battleships in size. This is the Shin Getter Dragon.
Also known as the superfusion of literally thousands of Getter Robo G components that the Federation government tried to stop by launching a nuke at it, only to fail disastrously. Yeah, we're doing more of the plot from Getter Robo Armageddon.
Thing is, though, the Shin Dragon spends a lot of time in that OVA series looking a lot different, it being an incomplete fusion of the Getter Gs through much of that story, more appearing as a living mountain with all the stone that's covered it, with only a destroyed head making its features tangible to make out. Most Super Robot Wars games before this, yeah, they actually featured that Shin Dragon as the primary villain, and not the unit that it later evolves into. And of course, piloting it is Dr. Saotome, actually alive throughout all of these events, as he's been infested by the invaders, and having hidden himself away to properly complete the Shin Dragon in a world that was lacking the overt Getter radiation poisoning for it to absorb, thanks to the dragons. In this universe, the Shin Dragon manifesting itself as it does, being something of an illusion to the dragons eating Getter rays to convert them into Draganium.
Technically, in this version of things, the Shin Dragon was left in the care of the Kabutos during Saotome's absence, but he was still the one building it and came here to complete it actually being needed as a source of Getter rays enormous enough for the upcoming operation to work.
And he's not the only one to stand in their way. The Surgeon Getter radiation dragging the Mycenae out for a battle as well. Saotome challenging Ryoma directly to stop him, if he can.
Now, there's something of an important byline I've seen from immersing myself in the Getter Robo content that kind of informs something about how erratic Dr. Saotome can be presented as in the Armageddon series. And I think it's important to mention as Saotome's actions have been heavily criticized as not making sense the farther along the OVA goes, especially after he's infested by invaders. But here's the thing. The invaders don't control him. His mind is still his own.
Everything Saotome does in the Armageddon series is explicable from the perspective that he is intentionally turning himself into a villain intended to be a stepping stone in the advancement of both the older Getter team and also the one helmed by his daughter. An obstacle to be surpassed that will drive them to become strong enough to defeat the invaders' plans once and for all as he pushes them and pushes them and pushes them, but always stopping just sort of actually ending them, until they actually show the strength they need to win. And I take that view because across all the Getter media, it always seems like Saotome is in some way communing with the will of the Getter Rays, ergo the Getter Emperor, in some way that helps drive the events of the series and the progression of the Getter technology and power set that would allow the Emperor to possibly be born. And it can't exactly be born in a world where other entities that thrive on Getter Rays like the invaders were to become the dominant species.
It also leads, in Armageddon, to one of the best fight scenes ever animated in a mecha anime.
Shine! Great Snow Mountain Storm! Poseidon! Get us Cyclone Storm! Thanks, Dragon! Let me at it!
Like, seriously, if you're not going to pick up the OVA series, just watch this full scene on YouTube. It is worth it, and it leads to the original use of the Stoner Sunshine.
And as is revealed as the Getter team here defeats the Shin Dragon, this as well was a test by Saotome, made possible by him tricking Stupid Hair into bringing him here, thinking he could screw over their plans to get to Iskandar by stealing and destroying the Shin Dragon, and Saotome's having none of it. He calls out Stupid Hair as being an awful scientist, as everything he did was in order to stick humanity in stagnation, never truly striving for better and to improve things, but to lock it all in one way and settle it as good enough, never striving for better until his little scenarios ran their course into complete failures, instead of starting from a viable premise and working to improve it over time as new information is made available. Again, Stupid Hair's creations are all defined by his failures. But Saotome's? Saotome's creations are limitless, as he completes the Shin Dragon with his own hands.
Ryoma! Hayato! Benki! Humanity's future lies in your hands! Sayonara!
And in turn, taking over piloting of the Shin Dragon are the new Getter team, Go, Kei, and the third man, Guy, who in this timeline have been part of the Photonic Power Research Institute to hide the Getter tech since the incident years back, and are thus more aware of the capabilities of one of the most massive mechanical constructs in animation, a battleship into and of itself.
K、ガイ、お前たちの意識をゲッターに委ねろ。
あう。
ゲッタービーム！
With Stupid Hair out of here, though, we get reinforcements from Vivian's mom Lamia and a larger horde of dragons, fulfilling their promise to be more active in protecting the world from threats, and taking over the battle while we finish our own preparations to set off to save the worlds. at least after we deal with the remains of the Gamelas Empire in the UC timeline, and Neo-Zeon remnants that refused Frontal's orders to stand down and come under the orders of Minerva. At this point, Okita finally decides our ship alliance needs a name, and 40 stages in, we finally get one. You can name it whatever you want.
When I play these games, I keep forgetting to put in the name Twilight Knights because it really fits the plots of X and T to use that .hack homage of a name for the crossover team.
But for the purposes of this game, we're sticking with the basic one. The Earth Fleet, Tenku. With the assistance of the Boson Jump Calculation Unit, Getter Rays, the Quantum System, and so on, the Yamato and all the assembled forces collectively jump back finally to the NCC dimension, and return to grind through the long, long trip to Iskandar.
A journey that has the heavy forces of the Gamelas before them, and the Guardian in turn dogging their trails. So join us next time as we finally move the trip back into deepest space.